You already know what needs to be done. You've known it for weeks, maybe longer, but somehow your days keep slipping away. One more scroll, one more excuse, one more reason why tomorrow will be better. But here's the truth. Procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear, disguised as comfort, fear of starting, fear of failing, and most of all, fear of becoming who you were meant to be. The Stoics had a word for this, akrasia, knowing the right thing but not doing it. They didn't wait for motivation, they didn't chase comfort, they lived by discipline, they chose action, especially when it was hard. Marcus Aurelius ruled through chaos, Epictetus found clarity in chains, Seneca faced death with calm. None of them waited, neither should you. This video reveals 8 Stoic strategies to beat procrastination and unlock your potential. If you're done wasting time and ready to reclaim your focus, this is your turning point. If that resonates, hit like and subscribe for more Stoic tools to sharpen your mind and strengthen your will. Let's begin.
Number 1.
The power of showing up. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait for the mood to strike, for inspiration to land, for motivation to magically show up and carry them forward. But the Stoics understood something more honest. Life doesn't wait, and neither should you. The real power isn't in waiting for clarity, it's in the courage to show up anyway. To begin without certainty, to act even when your emotions scream otherwise. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote in his Meditations, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being." He didn't write this while living in ease or luxury. He wrote it while dealing with plague, betrayal, and endless responsibility. Still, he urged himself to rise, to fulfill his duty, because that's what life demands. Not excuses, not ideal conditions, but presence. The illusion is that motivation will save you, that one day you'll finally feel ready. But that day rarely comes. What does come is resistance, fear, doubt, fatigue. The Stoics didn't wait for that to pass. They acted in spite of it. Discipline, they knew, isn't an emotion. It's a choice you make over and over, Epictetus said. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's it. That's the formula. Decide who you want to be and live it now, every single day. Seneca reminds us, while we are postponing, life speeds by. There is no neutral in life. You are either moving forward or drifting off course. Waiting becomes a habit, and that habit becomes your identity. The only way out is through consistent, often unimpressive, deliberate action. The kind of action that doesn't beg for praise but demands respect from yourself. You don't need to move mountains. You just need to move. Small steps taken daily. Build the kind of trust that motivation never can. You start to see yourself as reliable, as resilient, as someone who follows through. And once that identity takes root, everything changes. Progress is no longer based on bursts of energy. It's built into who you are and how you live. Epictetus never had a platform. He had pain. He had chains. But he also had discipline. And through that, he built an inner fortress. He trained his mind daily. He didn't write down a single word, yet his teachings survived 2,000 years. That's the power of showing up. It doesn't require fame. It only requires presence and repetition. In a world drunk on distractions, the simplest commitment is the hardest. To return to your work, to your craft, to your mind, day after day, that act, done quietly, is what separates the dreamers from the disciplined. The gym doesn't shape you unless you step inside. The journal doesn't teach you unless you write. The life you imagine doesn't manifest while you delay. So tomorrow when your alarm rings or that task sits untouched on your desk, don't wait for the spark. Be the spark. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They were simply faithful to their practices. They showed up when it was inconvenient, and that's exactly what made them powerful. You don't need the right mood, you need the right mindset, and that mindset begins the moment you act without excuse.
Number 2.
Overcoming initial resistance. Procrastination often disguises itself not as laziness, but as hesitation, not as rebellion, but as subtle resistance. And resistance, as the Stoics understood, is the first wall we must break through, not with force, but with clarity. It's that invisible weight between the thought and the action, the hesitation before writing the first sentence, the delay before stepping into the cold morning. It's not that you can't, it's that something inside you fears beginning. But once you start, everything changes. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't love yourself enough. Otherwise, you'd love your nature too, and what it demands of you." What does your nature demand? It demands that you act, that you engage, that you begin, even when your mind resists. Especially then, the key is to lower the barrier between thought and movement, to shrink the space between intention and action. The longer that space lingers, the heavier it becomes. The more you think about starting, the more reasons you'll invent not to. The Stoics taught that we are not victims of our thoughts. We are observers and directors of them. This is why the first step, no matter how small, is sacred, because once movement begins, the mind changes. It no longer spirals in indecision. It begins to focus. It returns to presence. That's the secret. Most of what we call procrastination is simply the fear of starting. And the cure for that fear is action, however imperfect. Seneca once said, "It's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." That applies perfectly to this moment. The start, the dread before the workout, the hesitation before a conversation, the delay in opening the laptop. Once you begin, difficulty shrinks. The action itself becomes the antidote to fear. Think of someone like Stephen Pressfield, the modern author who drew deeply from Stoic ideas in The War of Art. He named this force resistance with a capital R. He said resistance is strongest at the beginning, right before you sit down to write, to create, to build. But once you push past that first 5 minutes, resistance loses its grip. It fades and momentum takes over. The same is true with anything that matters. Your health, your career, even your inner peace. The beginning isn't hard because it's painful. It's hard because it's unfamiliar. This is why rituals matter. Why routines, however simple, anchor you. If you lay out your tools the night before, if you clear your desk, if you set a specific time to start, you reduce friction, you signal to your body. It's time not to be perfect, but to begin. Because the act of beginning is a declaration. It tells your mind, I'm in control now. And once that switch flips, the work unfolds. Remember, hesitation is not weakness. It's simply a test. A moment asking you, who is in control, your feelings or your will? Every time you begin, in spite of discomfort, you strengthen that will. And over time, beginning becomes your nature. Not a struggle, but a rhythm. That is the Stoic path. Not ease, but steady mastery. So the next time resistance whispers, not now, answer it with motion. Stand up, breathe deeply, begin, even badly, because action breeds clarity, and clarity is the enemy of procrastination. The first 5 minutes are the battlefield. Win those, and the rest often takes care of itself. Don't wait to feel ready. Readiness is not a gift. It's a reward earned by those who dare to begin before they feel worthy. Let that be your edge.
Number 3.
Striving for consistent effort, not quitting. One of the greatest myths in modern life is that progress must feel dramatic to be meaningful, that if it doesn't shake the earth, it doesn't count. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that greatness is built, not in flashes of glory, but in quiet consistency. What you do today, repeated tomorrow, shapes who you become. Not quitting, even when the results are invisible, is a superpower. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't you see the plants, the little birds, the ants, the spiders, and the bees going about their individual task, putting the world in order as best they can? And you're not willing to do your job as a human being?" There's no mention of passion, no grand finale, just daily effort, daily purpose, doing your part even when no one notices. The mistake most people make is giving up too soon. They try something once, don't see immediate change, and decide it's not worth it. But Seneca reminded us that excellence is not a lightning strike. He wrote, "No man becomes wise by chance." Wisdom, he said, is the product of effort, consistent, repeated, intentional action, not once, not when it's easy, but again and again. In fact, most breakthroughs are disguised as boredom. You sit at the desk, you go for the run, you show up for the meeting, and nothing happens. No applause, no recognition, just repetition. But what you don't see is that each act, each decision not to quit, is silently constructing a version of you that is stronger than the one before. That is the Stoic path. Endurance without complaint. Think of someone like Ryan Holiday before writing bestsellers on Stoicism. He wrote quietly for years. He published blog posts that hardly anyone read. He kept learning, kept showing up. Over time, that consistency became credibility. His name grew not because he chased noise, but because he remained committed to the work. That's how real transformation happens. Slowly, invisibly, then all at once. This is why the Stoics taught that results are not your concern. Your concern is the input, the daily discipline, the effort you bring to the present moment. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This is the rhythm of the Stoic life. Decide, act, repeat. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. We live in a culture obsessed with results, but if you chase outcomes, you'll burn out. If you chase process, you'll grow, because process is within your control. Process becomes identity, and once something becomes part of who you are, it no longer requires force. It becomes habit. That's how you win. Not by quitting when it gets hard, but by becoming the kind of person who doesn't. So when progress feels slow, remind yourself, slow is steady, steady is strong. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet, deliberate, and often invisible. The days you show up without reward are the days that count the most. Don't let impatience rob you of progress. Don't let your feelings decide your future. Instead, make this your vow. I will not quit. I will not retreat into comfort. I will stack the days one by one until I become undeniable. The world may not see it yet, but I will. And one day, they will too.
Number 4.
Focusing on the present task. In a world constantly pulling you in 1,000 directions, the ability to focus on one thing, fully, completely, is a rare and powerful gift. Most people don't lose their potential through failure. They lose it through distraction, through splitting their attention, scattering their energy, and living everywhere except the one place where life actually happens, right here, right now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." He didn't say to chase everything. He said to handle what's in front of you, because that's all you ever have. Not yesterday's regret, not tomorrow's pressure, just this moment and the task within it. The Stoics believed that the present moment is sacred, not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And isn't that true? We agonize over things that haven't happened, rehearse failures that haven't arrived, and forecast pain that never comes. Meanwhile, what actually needs our attention sits untouched. Life isn't happening in your head, it's happening in your hands. The present task is a doorway. It's a chance to connect with what matters, not as an escape, but as a practice. Washing the dishes, answering emails, writing a paragraph, these aren't chores, they are training. They're the proving ground where your discipline is tested and sharpened. If you can focus when it's boring, you're preparing your mind for when it really counts. Consider someone like Leonardo da Vinci. He wasn't just a genius because of talent. He was a master of focus. He would become obsessed with tiny details others overlooked, the curve of a smile, the angle of a shadow. What made his work timeless wasn't just brilliance, it was presence. He brought his whole mind to the task in front of him, no matter how small. In the same way, you don't need to be inspired. You need to be present. You don't need to finish everything. You need to begin something with full attention. That's what the Stoics practiced, showing up fully for whatever needed to be done. Focus is not a talent, it's a decision. When you feel overwhelmed, it's not because you have too much to do, it's because you're mentally trying to hold it all at once. Let that go. Zoom in. Ask yourself, what's the next action I can give my full energy to? Then give it fully without looking sideways, without thinking ahead, just this task, just this moment. Because here's the truth. If you can't focus on the small things, you'll be swallowed by the big ones. The mind must be trained in simplicity before it can handle complexity. Every present task is a chance to build that muscle, to strengthen your attention, to master your mind. And remember, focus isn't just about productivity, it's about presence. It's about respect. When you give your full attention to a task, you're not just getting things done. You're honoring your own life. You're saying, this moment matters. I matter. What I do, even if unseen, even if ordinary, carries weight. That is the Stoic way. Not to rush through life, but to meet it fully. One breath, one task, one deliberate choice at a time. So today, don't try to conquer the whole mountain. Just take one solid step. Do it with care, with attention, with your whole being, and then do it again. That's how progress is made. That's how peace is built. Not all at once, but one present task at a time.
Number 5.
Eliminating non-essential activities. One of the greatest causes of procrastination isn't laziness. It's excess. Too many commitments, too many tasks, too many distractions pulling us in too many directions. The Stoics warned us, if you don't guard your time, the world will consume it for you, and when everything feels important, nothing truly gets done. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential, which brings a double satisfaction. To do less, better. This is not minimalism for its own sake. This is strategic subtraction, a deliberate reduction in noise so that what matters can actually breathe. When you say yes to everything, you end up doing nothing well. We are not tired because we do too little. We are tired because we do too much of the wrong things. Things that don't align with our values. Things that drain rather than build. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, said, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful. If you saw time as a currency, would you spend it differently? Here's a truth most people ignore. The more options you have, the harder it is to move. It's called decision fatigue, and it bleeds into your motivation, your focus, and your energy. The Stoics taught us to live simply, not out of deprivation, but out of clarity. When you remove the inessential, what remains gains power. Look at someone like Steve Jobs. Though not a Stoic by label, he practiced essentialism like a philosopher. He wore the same clothes, held short meetings, eliminated anything that distracted from the mission, not because he was cold, but because he understood the cost of scattered attention, and he protected his mind like it was a sacred space. You should too. So what does this mean practically? It means reviewing your life with brutal honesty. What meetings drain you? What apps eat your hours? What obligations no longer serve the person you're becoming? Eliminate, delegate, or automate. Do it without guilt, because keeping everything doesn't mean you're responsible. It often means you're afraid. Afraid to say no, afraid to disappoint, afraid to be seen as selfish. But the Stoics knew. A life lived for everyone is a life wasted on no one. You cannot be clear if you are constantly reacting. You cannot build peace while juggling noise. You must choose. Choose what stays. Choose what goes. Choose what gets your full self and what gets none of you at all. Eliminating the non-essential is not about doing less. It's about making space to do more of what matters. More deep work, more stillness, more intentional movement toward your values. When you clear the path, you stop tripping over everything that was never meant to be there in the first place. So today, take inventory. Where is your time leaking? Where is your energy going? What would happen if you cut 20% of your schedule? Not randomly, but precisely? Would you suffer? Or would you breathe again? The answer is found in what you're willing to walk away from. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't doing more, it's doing less with purpose. And remember, what you eliminate defines you just as much as what you pursue. The philosopher's power isn't in how much he can hold, but in what he can release. Don't fear a simpler life, fear a scattered one. Because peace doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less, and doing it with full attention. Number 6, overcoming perfectionism. Perfectionism wears many disguises. Sometimes it looks like high standards. Other times it hides behind the need for more time, more research, more preparation. But at its core, perfectionism is fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. The Stoics saw right through it. They understood that the pursuit of perfection often becomes the perfect excuse to do nothing at all. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's not a call to lower your standards. It's a call to release your ego, because when you wait for perfect, you delay progress, you postpone your growth, you hand your power to an illusion. The Stoic path is not about flawless execution. It's about deliberate movement, Seneca wrote. While we wait for life, life passes. The same is true for work. While you wait for the perfect moment, the perfect version, the perfect conditions, life moves on, and you miss your chance to shape it. Look at someone like Brené Brown, a modern thinker who champions vulnerability. She speaks openly about the paralyzing grip of perfectionism and how it kept her from publishing, from speaking, from creating, until she realized that the only way forward was to show up anyway, messy, imperfect, human. And that's what resonated with the world. This is what the Stoics would call courage, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. You cannot grow if you're obsessed with appearing polished. You cannot move forward if you are stuck rewriting the first sentence endlessly. You must be willing to ship the draft, send the message, launch the imperfect version, knowing that refinement comes through action, not theory. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That's memento mori, the practice of remembering death. But it's not meant to depress you. It's meant to sharpen you, to pull you out of delay and into decision. Because nothing about perfectionism survives when you remember how temporary life is. Consider this. How many ideas have you buried under the weight of perfection? How many conversations have you avoided because you didn't know how to say it perfectly? How many opportunities have you let pass, waiting for the stars to align? The Stoic doesn't wait for perfect. The Stoic honors progress. They respect reality. They trade control for presence and fantasy for execution. What matters isn't how clean your process looks. What matters is that you move, that you create, that you keep showing up, flawed and all. So the next time you hesitate because something's not perfect, remind yourself, perfect is a moving target. It never arrives, but your life is happening now. Your growth is happening now. And if you want to become great at anything, you must be willing to begin while you're still rough around the edges. Take the step, share the work, speak the words. Let the world see you as you are, and let your consistency write the story that perfection never could. And remember, what people admire most is not flawlessness, but realness. They admire the person who shows up with the courage to be seen, the humility to be wrong, and the discipline to try again. That's what makes a Stoic powerful. Not the pursuit of perfection, but the relentless pursuit of truth. Through effort, through presence, and through action. Number 7, embracing habit and automation. Willpower is a limited resource. Even the most disciplined person will eventually run out of energy if they rely on effort alone. That's why the Stoics, though advocates of mental toughness, also understood the power of structure, of building habits so reliable that action becomes second nature. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's not just a motivational quote, it's a blueprint. First, decide who you want to become, then build habits that support that identity. Because if you wake up every day having to decide whether you'll do the right thing, you'll lose. But if the decision is already made, locked into your routine, you conserve energy for the moments that truly require it. This is the secret of automation. It frees your mind to focus on higher things. Marcus Aurelius didn't rely on inspiration. He built a rhythm. Each morning he reminded himself of what kind of day it might be, what kind of people he might encounter, and how he planned to respond. That's not spontaneous brilliance. That's strategic repetition. That's mental training baked into his daily rhythm. Think of someone like James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. His entire philosophy is deeply aligned with Stoicism, especially the idea that success doesn't come from intense bursts of effort, but from small, repeatable behaviors. You don't rise to the level of your goals, he writes. You fall to the level of your systems. The Stoics would agree. Too many people waste time trying to feel motivated every day, but motivation is a mood, not a method. The Stoics taught us to build our lives on things we can control. You can't control how you feel in the morning, but you can control whether you lay out your tools the night before. You can control whether you have a routine. You can control your systems, and your systems will carry you when your strength runs low. Automation is not laziness, it's wisdom, it's preparation. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Most people wait for opportunity. The Stoic prepares for it. He prepares not just once, but every day. Through habit, through planning, through systems that make right action easier than inaction. But here's the paradox. The more disciplined your systems, the more freedom you feel. When your morning routine is set, you don't waste time. When your workspace is organized, your mind follows. When your habits are clear, your energy flows into doing. Not deciding, that is the quiet brilliance of automation. It creates space. It builds momentum. It allows you to move through your day with a kind of quiet force. So ask yourself, where are you relying on willpower when you could be relying on systems? Where are you choosing chaos when you could create order? The Stoic doesn't leave his discipline to chance. He designs it, he engineers it into his life. And by doing so, he removes the friction that derails others. You don't need to become robotic. You need to become reliable, and reliability is built one habit at a time. Not grand, not dramatic, but repeatable, predictable, steady. That's how greatness is built, not in the chaos of constant decision-making, but in the quiet rhythm of intentional design. Number 8, action over words. Remember your mortality and focus on what you can control. There are 3 forces the Stoics use to cut through procrastination like a blade: action, mortality, and control. When combined, these principles form an unshakable mindset, one that moves you out of paralysis and into purpose. Let's begin with action. The Stoics didn't talk about their values, they lived them. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." The world doesn't need more talkers, it needs more doers. More people who build, create, and contribute without waiting for permission. You don't become strong by declaring your intentions. You become strong by moving your feet. Now consider mortality. One of the most sobering and clarifying practices in Stoicism is memento mori. Remember that you must die. To some that sounds grim, but to the Stoic, it's a compass. It removes hesitation. It shatters procrastination. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Death isn't something to fear. It's something to use. Use it to wake up. Use it to start. Because the clock is ticking whether you act or not. Next comes control, or more accurately, clarity about what you can control. This is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Most people are paralyzed by things outside their influence. What others think, how results unfold, whether their work will be applauded. But the Stoics cut through that noise. They taught us to focus on the one thing always in our hands: our effort, our response, our movement. Take the example of Viktor Frankl. Though not a Stoic in label, he lived its essence, imprisoned in a concentration camp, stripped of everything. He realized there was one thing they couldn't take: his freedom to choose his response. That moment of clarity became the foundation of his philosophy. Between stimulus and response, he wrote, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That's Stoic power. That's inner control. These 3 forces, action, mortality, and focus, are not abstract ideas. They're tools, and they're most effective when combined. When you stop overthinking, remember life is short, and act on what you can affect. You create momentum, and momentum beats perfection every time. Procrastination survives on illusions. The illusion of later, the illusion of control over outcomes, the illusion that life is unlimited. Stoicism doesn't entertain those illusions. It brings you back to the truth. You are mortal. You are responsible. You are capable, but only if you begin. So take the step, make the call, finish the sentence, open the document, launch the thing you've been sitting on, not recklessly, but fearlessly. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. Because your time is finite, and your power lies not in what you hope to do, but in what you choose to do now. And remember this, motion is meaning. It's not the grand gesture that shapes you. It's the next step. The Stoic doesn't wait to feel brave. He moves while afraid. He doesn't wait to feel confident. He acts while uncertain. He doesn't wait to be understood. He speaks with clarity and lets the silence do the rest. Because he knows movement is freedom. It doesn't just break procrastination, it rewires your identity from thinker to doer, from warrior to warrior. And if you fail, then fail while moving. Fail with purpose. Fail forward. Because the Stoic doesn't fear failure. He fears wasting the opportunity to try. There is no perfect moment. There is only now, and the now is enough. Procrastination ends the moment we decide that movement matters more than mood. Today we've walked through 8 Stoic strategies: showing up, winning the first minute, stacking days, guarding focus, cutting the excess, releasing perfection, designing habits, and acting with urgency. They work only if you work them. So close this video and take the smallest decisive step toward what you know must be done. Then take another tomorrow if this journey spoke to you. Like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone drifting in delay. Remember, discipline is freedom, and freedom begins right now. Your future self is waiting.